Hi, I'm Dan. I'm an OpenSciEd facilitator and longtime storylines teacher. Today, we're going to talk about Lesson 11 in the C.5 unit. We're going to start by talking about how we got here. The previous lesson, Lesson 10, we figured out that hydrogen fuel cells are similar to batteries and engines, but there's some key differences, both in how they work, as well as some special constraints around them. We also figured out that most hydrogen is actually produced from fossil fuels in a process which emits carbon dioxide, and the actual fuel stock in many cases is methane, which is itself a greenhouse gas. So in this lesson, we're wondering where the energy comes from when we use uranium as a fuel, because uranium hopefully doesn't have some of those same problems with greenhouse gases. We'll start off by looking at the lesson overall. So this is an investigation lesson. It's also problematizing because it's pushing a little bit beyond fuels into actually selecting one of them. This is a 3-day lesson with some significant preparation, but not too bad. The reason for that preparation is basically because each day has some different components. There are no investigations here, and students will need devices because there is an electronic exit ticket on the 3rd day. There is an optional video, which is student-facing, which is basically to provide additional support for some kind of involved text around a reference. There are 3 loops in this lesson, so we'll dig into each one in turn. Day 1 is essentially a full day loop, and on this day, students are going to start figuring out how a nuclear reactor is structured, how it works. They're also going to take kind of an initial matter lens to nuclear processes, and then they're also going to start digging in with an energy lens. The 2 big figure outs here are that neutrons and protons are conserved in nuclear fission, and that you do actually get new atoms there. This is the first time we've seen something like this in the course. And then outside energy is going to be required to start fission. Then on day 2, students are going to take that energy lens that they had on day 1, and they're going to push back and say, we can't really explain this energy thinking without returning in more depth to the matter and forces. And so they're going to analyze some data on protons and neutrons, make sense of that. Then they're going to read about the strong nuclear force and build that into their model. And so the figure outs here are that we expect protons to repel, but when you've got the right ratio of protons and neutrons, then the strong nuclear force is going to be able to hold the nucleus together. And that's only going to happen on short ranges. And so when the outside energy comes in, that can actually break apart the nucleus and then cause the 2 halves of the nucleus to repel, which releases energy. Then on day 3, students are going to go beyond the actual science of this into the engineering, kind of similar to how they thought about both science and engineering in the same lesson in lessons 9 and 10. And so students are going to read about some different aspects of nuclear fission and have some discussion around some of the criteria and constraints associated with it, as well as some potential advantages and disadvantages. Eventually, they're going to figure out that these various constraints exist around the size of reactors, their safety, cost, environmental concerns, which ultimately limits their use as a fuel. We pretty much only see it as a fuel in like nuclear submarines and large ships. So just to summarize those figure outs, in nuclear fission, neutrons and protons are conserved. We figure out that the strong nuclear force works on short ranges, and you need outside energy to break apart the bonds in the strong nuclear force. And once it starts to pull apart, that nucleus does, energy is going to transfer from electric fields to the particles, which is going to increase the temperature. And there's various constraints limiting the use of uranium as a fuel. Some key moments here. In part 3, students are going to first explore the reactants and products in a nuclear process. We use this terminology so that there would be parallels to the types of chemical reactions that students have seen so far. And ultimately, what's going on here is students are going to figure out what happens in nuclear fission. You start with a neutron coming in, and then whatever the initial element is, and then you get out 2 different elements, which are much smaller, as well as some extra neutrons. And as they do this, they're going to identify isotopes for the first time, as well as figuring out some ideas about conservation of mass. And so these are terms that students could add to the word wall. After that, students are going to explore simulation, which introduces them to some energy thinking around nuclear fission. And they're going to talk about that in the building understandings discussion. Essentially here, they're going to establish that you need some sort of energy input, very similar to how in exothermic reactions that aren't completely spontaneous, we need to put in a little bit of energy to kick it off. Or even in endothermic reactions, we often have to put in some energy. That energy is used to break the bonds, right? But here we don't have a clear model for that because there are no bonds breaking and forming in the way that we've talked about before. So we need some sort of explanation for why we need energy input, because we're not breaking bonds in the sense of we think of bonds. It's very unclear like what's even holding this nucleus together. So we investigate the matter that's involved a little bit more. And as we look at data, we see that there's way more neutrons than protons for the types of big elements that tend to undergo fission. And so those neutrons must be doing something important. They must be helping hold the nucleus together, but they don't have any charge. So what force do they do that with? We're trying to figure out some sort of explanation for what it is which is actually holding the nucleus together. We read about the strong nuclear force, and then we can map that to our simulation, and we can use very parallel thinking to what we use for exothermic reactions, realizing that you have to input some energy, and then you get a lot more energy out. At this point, we've figured out a lot of the science ideas, so we're going to move on to some of the engineering questions that we have, and we jigsaw around those engineering questions. There's 4 readings here. You can assign them in different ways. I think this is an awesome opportunity to let students look after their interests as long as there's a decent distribution in the class. There's one about safety, focused on control rods. There's another one about nuclear waste. There's another one on safety, focused on the supply chain. And then one focused on the actual infrastructure of nuclear plants. As students talk about these, they'll actually add implications for criterion constraints to their progress trackers. And so that's something that they've been doing all along, but just another reminder of that because that will become important in subsequent lessons. So from here, students have figured out how different fuels produce energy, but now we've got questions about how we can apply all this to making choices around actual transportation. And you see there, we're going to space for that. Let's talk about some tips and tricks. So first of all, this nuclear reactor, this is in one of the earlier parts, and it looks really complicated, but you don't have to stress about students making sense of everything about it. There is an audio version. That's the optional video I mentioned earlier, and that's intended to help students make sense of the block of explanatory text around this diagram. But ultimately, the goal here is just to get some simple things on the table. We're trying to help students realize that you do need a neutron to kick things off. That's something that's key in the text. As well as from this diagram, we start to see some of the other pieces that you need. There's control rods. You are just like using the heat to heat up steam. So it almost seems magical, right? You just have this fuel and somehow it gets hot, which leads to lots of questions that drive the first day of the lesson. The other thing students might take away from this all looks very big, right? This is not something that you're likely to put on your everyday vehicle. So another tip is to make sure you test the sim as well as the code app. The simulation is a little bit older, so it should work in most modern browsers because of some updates that have been made behind the scenes, but you just want to make sure that it does in fact work. And then for the code app, that is a tool we've used a little bit in some prior units, other OpenSciEd units, but if you're not familiar, make sure to take some time to familiarize yourself with it. You might even make some interesting observations of your own as you explore. Another tip, make sure to read that simulation mapping teacher reference. It goes in depth into how we can explain nuclear fission to students using the same type of energy transfer model that we developed for exothermic reactions earlier in the unit. The goal here is not to introduce equals mc squared, which is probably how most of us were taught to think about nuclear fission. And although it's true that in nuclear fission, you end up with less mass at the end than you did at the beginning, that's not because particles were destroyed. If you want more information on that, it's worth looking at a couple of the references cited in the simulation mapping reference. Instead, what's actually happening? Or what's maybe a better explanation for us to continue using our same models is that once you start to break the nucleus apart, those protons are really, really repulsive and they're really close to each other. So that energy is going to transfer from the field between them out into the motion of the particles as they start to push apart. And so that's where all our energy comes from. It turns out that we measure that as less mass. But again, that's where this document and the references it cites can be really helpful. Something else I'll note is that the jigsaw here around these different safety and environment and infrastructure readings is to establish criterion constraints. At this point, we're not making big proclamations around nuclear fission being good or bad. That's territory that we probably kind of want to stay out of in this unit because it's a bigger emphasis to think about electricity sources in the first physics unit. But we just want students to get some ideas on the table so then they can evaluate whether or not they want to think about nuclear fission as a transportation option in subsequent lessons. In terms of the personal glossary, 2 new ideas or 2 new words with meanings that we co-construct because we think about them a lot are isotopes as well as nuclear fission. And then there's a number of words whose meanings we encounter. We see neutrons again. We know they exist, but we haven't thought about them in a long time because they don't have a huge impact on chemical reactions, but they're back now. We also encounter a number of words like chain reaction, nuclear waste, nuclear reactor, strong nuclear force, and control rod. And so those are terms we want to make sure students are thinking about so they can talk about them, but ultimately they're not words necessarily that students are doing a lot of sense making around. Poster management. You are going to use the MEF poster from prior lessons. And then during this lesson, we create an annotated simulation. That could be something you create on a poster, or it could be something as simple as if you have the projected simulation, then whatever surface is projected onto, you put some sticky notes with annotations on that. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next video.